Hello, I'm Kevin Hayward from KSH Safety Services. I'm a health and safety consultant and trainer. I'm going to be talking to you about playing with fire and why learning lessons from accidents is very important. On the 14th of June 2017, a fault in a refrigerator caused a small fire in a fourth floor block of flats in London. Within minutes, the entire skyscraper of flats was ablaze, and Britain's worst health and safety accidents of this millennium occurred. 8 months earlier, the Grenville Tower's Residents Action Group wrote of a serious concerns on their website that they firmly believed that only a catastrophic event will bring an end to the dangerous living conditions and neglect of health and safety legislation within the tower. They added that only an incident that results in the serious loss of life of residents will allow the external scrutiny to occur, and that serious fire in a tower block or similar high-density residential property is the most likely reason that those who wield power will be found out and brought to justice. It seemed that warnings were repeatedly made, lessons ignored from other fires, and nothing was done about it. Before I start on the awful events of Grenville Tower, let us pause for a moment in reflection. As you do, don't think of what happened that night. Don't think it won't happen to me, but think about what you can do in your job and in your life that could cause you or others harm, and what you can do now to prevent that harm from happening. Health and safety issues will happen to you. It does already affect you. At this moment in time, we as a nation, along with many other nations, are in lockdown in order to protect the health and safety of our species. When the first stage of the public inquiry opened into the events of Grenville Tower that led to the deaths of 72 people and the loss of homes for hundreds more, its chairman, Sir Martin Moore Buck, said that the inquiry can and will provide answers to the pressing questions of how a disaster of this kind could occur in 21st century London. And it has and will continue to provide answers. It will and must change legislation, and some people will be more likely eventually found guilty for corporate manslaughter or for some other serious health and safety offences. The same happens and has happened with every major health and safety related tragedy throughout history. We learn, we act, sometimes too late, but we never really do enough. Because of the ongoing investigations and legal processes into the fire, I don't wish to speculate or apportion blame today, but what has happened at Grenville is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. As a human race, we are learners, and learning has played a pivotal role in our evolution and dominance as a species. From the earliest cavemen, learning to make spears to hunt and learning to light a fire for warmth and to cook, everything we do has been as a result of learning from errors and mistakes. But when it comes to our safety, we ignore lessons from our past and lessons from our ancestors. As a result, accidents and disasters still happen. We rarely learn, and when we do, we don't always learn enough. Pick and choose. In our modern society, we see far too often children being prevented from playing out or being adventurous. They are mollycoddled and shrouded so much that they do not learn danger that can protect them later in life. We have become too much of a risk-averse society. Health and safety professionals get a bad name, often because people are risk-averse. Schools making children wear safety goggles to play conkers gave the industry a grilling in the press about a decade or so ago, even though it was the head teacher's decision based on some bad advice he'd received. Our professional body, IOSH, sponsored the World Conquer Championships in response to that bad press. Please let children play and experience some hazards. Let them have the same knocks and scrapes that we had as children, so that they can learn from their mistakes and so that, as they grow older, they will become less risk averse. I often hear, generally from older generations, when I were a lad there were no such thing as health and safety. I'm sorry, but yes, there was. Health and safety has existed as long as humans have. Those cavemen, on first discovering fire, will have probably suffered injuries and smoke inhalation, and over time would have learned how to control their fires and where to put them out. They will have learnt what food is safe to catch and eat, and what would have given them the runs or even killed them. Health and safety best practice can even be found in the Old Testament book of Deuteronomy, believed to have been written around the 7th century BC. Chapter 22, verse 8 says, "When you build a new house, be sure to put a railing round the edge of the roof. Then you will not be responsible if somebody falls off and is killed." Yet despite this, people still fall from roofs nearly 3 millennia later. We do not learn. Jump ahead to Tudor times, 1540 to be exact, when a report was written into the death of a young child. A young child, standing near to the wheel of a horse mill, was by some mishap come within a sweep and compass of the cogwheel and therefore was torn to pieces and killed. And upon inquisition taken, it was found that the wheel was the cause of the child's death, whereupon the mill was forthwith defaced and pulled down. The report did not suggest any ways of making other horse mills of the same type or any safer to prevent such accidents happening again. Lessons were not, it seems, learned. Throughout history, it is the poorer working classes who have suffered more than the wealthy as a result of health and safety misdemeanors. Even the earliest pieces of health and safety and environmental legislation were only put in place to keep the wealthy happy. Many do not realize that some of the first laws on the subject were in my local area of St. Helens, where noise levels and pollution from an alkaline works caused inconveniences to local parliamentarians 200 years ago. The laws implemented did nothing to help the poor workers, but it protected the wealthy nearby. Some have suggested that one of the secondary causes of the Grenville fire was a mismatch in social status between rich and poor in Kensington. I'll let the inquiry decide that, but it is history repeating itself. Again, have we ever learned? It was only really in the early 20th century, with some of the Factories Acts, that proper health and safety laws were introduced to protect all workers in specific industries. And it was only on the 1st of January 1975, with the implementation of the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974, that all workplaces became obliged to meet health and safety compliance. And yet still, serious accidents and deaths occur. Admittedly, the numbers are dropping year on year, but with around 2,500 deaths through asbestos-related illnesses each year, they are still far too high. There have been major fires throughout history. Inquiries and inquests have been held. Laws have been changed, but there is always a reason to lessen the impact of those laws, usually political, economic, or money related. So what value is there in life? On the 8th of May 1979, a fire was reported in what was said to be the largest Woolworths store in Europe in central Manchester. There were about 500 customers and staff inside the store, and in total 10 people died in the fire. 26 were rescued by the fire brigade and 47 were taken to hospital. It's believed that the fire was started either by a damaged electrical cable that had polyurethane foam filled sofas stacked in front of it, or by a discarded cigarette. This foam filling was highly flammable and had burnt at 700 degrees C, releasing a deadly cyanide gas. A single breath had been enough to kill. As flames took hold, acrid smoke rose to the ceiling, obscuring the exits and giving people under a minute to get to a place of safety. For some, this was not long enough, and some doors were actually locked. Sprinklers and smoke detectors were discretionary. Their compulsory installation was recommended in the reports that followed. So how is it that 39 years later, people are still asking why Grenville Tower had no sprinkler system? Lessons again appear not to have been learnt. Should not be an excuse when it comes to protecting life. Having said that, some lessons were learnt from Woolworths. Better fire retardant furniture was introduced, along with the requirement for fire marshals and basic risk assessments. These lessons learned have undoubtedly saved countless of lives since. During the FA Cup semi-final of 1981 between Tottenham Hotspur and Wolverhampton Wanderers, at the Leppings Lane end of the Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield, an incident occurred after two perimeter gates outside the ground were opened. 38 supporters sustained injuries, including stitches, 2 broken arms, 1 broken leg, and some head grazing due to crushing within the stadium. We all know what happened 8 years later in the corresponding fixture at the same place when the same gates were opened by the same people. Lessons, yet again, had not been learned, and tragically 96 people lost their lives. The Hillsborough disaster inquests and investigations over recent decades have shown one of human nature's biggest failings, that human beings go into self-protection mode when errors are made. The truth gets hidden and the results. Lessons cannot be learned and mistakes cannot be rectified to prevent reoccurrence. The same happens every day in workplaces across the country. Workers stumble but do not fall over trip hazards. They don't report them. Reporting near misses can mean problems get resolved and sorted before the next worker trips and breaks an arm or worse. A serious injury occurs and those who are at fault hide evidence or lie when investigations start in order to protect their own skin. I've seen it far too often. In one case I dealt with about 7 years ago, an employee of a particular company pulled an electrical fan heater out of a cupboard one autumn after it had been thrown in the cupboard that spring. On plugging it in, the employee suffered an electric shock and shot across the room, sustaining internal injuries. The building's electrics shorted as a result. A manager had purchased the heater a year before, despite it being against company policy. Realizing she was in the wrong, the manager refused to allow the first aider to call for an ambulance, tried to force witnesses to change their stories, and tried hiding the damaged heater. The injured employee ended up with 3 months off work and successfully sued the employer. The manager was dismissed, and stricter controls of the use of unauthorized electrical appliances was introduced. We need to learn lessons, follow procedures, and heed warnings and act upon them to prevent further injury in the future. Earlier, I asked you to reflect for a moment and think about what you could do in your job or everyday life to prevent injury to yourself or others. It could be as simple as reducing the speed you drive at. Thousands have been killed due to speeding motorists, yet we still speed. Don't be the latest statistic. Let's start a trend of learning from others and our own errors and misfortune. We have the perfect opportunity at the moment, as we spend time in isolation from each other, to reflect on this, and once we're allowed out again, to create a new normal, thinking of others, slowing down, and thinking about everybody else's health and safety. In your workplace, do you or your company ignore near misses and accidents or fail to report them? Does your company ignore health and safety compliance issues and legislation? Have you got suitable first aid provision in place? Does everybody know what they should do in the event of an incident? Are complaints Incidents, accidents, and near misses investigated? Are control measures fully implemented without cutting corners? If not, why not? Are you sitting on a disaster or serious incident just waiting to happen? Are you actually playing with fire? Use the time now to be more proactive with your health and safety management. Let's create a new safety culture. I hope that the inquiry and legal cases into the events of Grenville are thorough, with nothing left unturned. I hope lessons are learned from all aspects of that awful night and the lead up to it. And I hope that we can now see a turning point in our culture that allows us to learn and be safer in all that we do. An accident is a lesson not learned. Good health and safety management is no accident, it is a lesson learned. Thank you.